And so the idea was to do 2 gigs, just do something really limited, and check out with some old associates and friends. And I mean, like me personally, it was just really nice to go back, and the idea of just visiting something in a very limited way where we could all get something out of it, do it sort of, do it equally, and kind of, and do it in such a way. Do it in such a way where it probably won't get too irritating for anyone involved in it, because I'm not the easiest person to work with. I probably wouldn't have said that back in those, so now it's like, it's like you can pick all the good grapes, can't you? You can leave all the other ones you don't want on the ground, So I think it's just the idea of, we had some, we probably talk about in this interview, we had some quite funny times along the way. There were some funny times, and it's good to revisit it, to kind of to do a code on something, and also just because everyone's in such a different place from where we were when we used to play, and everyone, I'm not talking about myself, everyone else in the band has just done so many impressive, amazing things, in different ways, like being authors and playing with different people and having, really a lot more success than we had with what we were doing. So it's nice to just come back as a little kind of Philip and, just have, just play 2 gigs.
Philip's not playing, is he?
What's that?
I thought we said Philip wasn't playing.
Well, we'll just we'll put him in the corner. We'll put him in the naughty step.
Tom, is this the last time, or is this like one of these kind of status quo last tours till the next tour? Or
I don't think. I mean, the thing is, I asked Paul and Steve and Jason and Kelly, and had no idea whether they'd all just say bugger off. No idea. So I think it's like, I was really chuffed that they wanted to do it. And so I don't think it's something we'll be doing regularly. I mean, we might be seeing one other more often. We couldn't have seen one other less, really, apart from seeing that, books that people are writing and podcasts and watching stuff on videos and stuff. So I don't think it's something we're going to be doing endlessly. I think it's good to have something that's quite defined, I think.
So, Paul, working with difficult frontmen, I imagine you've had a little bit of experience of that in your life, haven't you?
Well, working with awkward frontmen?
Yeah, well, you've dabbled in that kind of field, haven't you?
Tom's the nicest pie. He's a pussycat. Nicest frontman I ever worked with. Not the most talented, but you can't have everything, can you?
I mean, what's it like for you to get out and play again? Because, like Tom was just saying, you spent the last couple of years writing books, doing podcasts. You kind of stepped onto the other side of the divide, haven't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Extricated kind of grinded to a halt in every sense at the beginning of lockdown, really. Brix is now doing her own thing. So I had no prospects of playing again. So when Tom just, it's one of those. It is what it is. It's a self-contained. Yeah, he said, do you want to do 2 gigs, one in Manchester, one in London? I have no reason why not to. I really got on with everybody in the Lovers. It's great to see them. Obviously, kept in touch with some more than others, but we never fell out. I mean, we went to each other's big occasion birthdays and all that kind of thing. We had a very good relationship, sort of social and working, really.
I mean, do you really feel the need to play drums? I mean,
no,
not at all.
I don't feel the need to do it at all. No, so I do it when I want to do it.
Mm.
It's quite liberating, actually. That thing.
Yeah, I was imagining it's liberating. I mean, to a point, it's great doing the podcasts and the books and dealing with the past history. But it's also quite nice to keep doing stuff that's actually going forwards or doing the next chapter, in a sense.
Yeah, that's right. But I don't feel the need to do it for the sake of doing it, if you know what I mean. If I want to do it, I'll do it. But I have no burning desire to get out there and play the drums. Which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who do, But people. Tom's a musician, and that's what Tom's does. So I've not really counted myself as a musician for a long time. I mean, you're talking decades, really. I'm someone who plays music occasionally. I'm not. I'm not a musician who does other things. Musician is one of the other things I do, if you like.
I mean, for you, Tom, you like Paul was saying, you actually have relentlessly continued Synths and Spirals. Just you always seem to be constantly playing, and you seem to be constantly playing in towns that even I've never heard of. I mean, you definitely put the work in.
I think maybe I'm kind of going. Actually, myself, I'm getting to a little bit of a different stage. I mean, I did a gig in Wrexham in February, and I got RSI in my hand, and I was playing the guitar, and the finger on my hand, it got bent down in a claw, and I had to go prise it open like that. So I got in touch. There's like a medical charity called BAPAM, which is like a charity just for musicians, and they told me how to correct that. And I thought, you know what, I'm actually maybe step off the sort of the merry-go-round a little bit. And I've been learning to play the piano for the last 4 months, and I'm absolutely terrible at it. But the idea was to try and maybe relearn with my hands, how to use my hands and how to. So I'm sort of planning on maybe trying to learn to play the piano, really, but it's going to take years and years to do.
I mean, why did you decide to play? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, of course, but that relentless, endless touring of small venues, was that just a model you liked? The lone troubadour, or
I think I'm basically just lacking in any quality of imagination. I think that's what it is. And I do also have this kind of thing which I'm not proud of, and it's not a boast. It's how some people go to churches and they want to shout the word fuck at the top of the voice in the church, or they look kind of, maybe I'm just speaking about myself here, but you walk over a Clifton Suspension Bridge and you think, what would you like to seagull over the side of it? Well, I have a kind of thing which I'm not proud of, which is when I go and see bands, whether it's the smallest band in the back room or whether it's some big arena gig, if I don't like them, I have to actually suppress the desire to walk up on stage and punch the singer, which I'm not going to do. But I do have that kind of, there could be a whole, I can't think what the guy did, Psycho. There could be a whole film about me, not punching famous and not famous singers on stage. Well, I'm not going to do it. It's just, so I think out there playing, at least you're playing, so you're not kind of, you're not, you're in the stream. But I think with me, I want to be more strategic in my career in the future, and I think this is part of it. Like, we're doing these 2 gigs, and already yesterday, someone said to me, we've heard that. You guys are playing these 2 gigs. We've heard that you're playing at Aatma and the 100 Club. We'd like to play here. And I said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. I said, we can't do it because it's just a limited thing. So this is a slightly more strategic thing. And the thing is, it's true of Paul as well. Because when we used to play back in the band, even many years ago, Paul was quite often going off to America to go and do stuff, with his career. And, like Kelly is a trade unionist, and Jason's out there playing with Spares and lots of other people. And Steve is, he's just busy with his thing. So it was quite nice to say no. So in the future, I'll probably be a little bit more strategic, and I can't base my career on the idea that I'm suppressing the desire to punch famous and unfamous singers on stage if I don't really like what they're doing.
It's kind of worked for other people, but it can be quite limiting.
I might have a future in the diplomatic corps, with this government.
You don't get invited on many guest lists then, Tom, no?
Well, that's the problem. That's
might do it boxing matches, but as long as
boxing matches, he's got this burning desire to get up and sing at boxing matches. Quite ironic.
So can't you just settle it? Can't you just settle it properly? It's funny. I just tell you the story. I'm doing a kind of album with Gordon, who used to be in Too Much Texas, because I went to see him in November, and his mum died in 1988, just before I left Too Much Texas and joined the Spirals, and his dad and his sister died just before the pandemic within 3 weeks, one another, and he was obviously in a very bad state. So we're doing an album at the moment, and one of the songs is about, we come from Abingdon, which is like the most sort of, I'm quite posh, but the most white working class city you could ever seen in the 1970s. And in 1978, I think it was, Muhammad Ali visited there for a day because there was a bare knuckle fighter who was one of his friends. And like everyone just came out. It's like seeing out of the Bible. Everyone just came out of where they were to see Muhammad Ali. And there's a picture of Gordon with Muhammad Ali. So we're doing a song called When Ali Came to Abingdon, because it's just so bizarre. This really white town in the south of England is completely associated with the most famous black man in the world, which is, I think, it's a good idea for radio.
That was Ali's power. He was quite a radical speaker, but somehow his charisma took him into every corner of everywhere, didn't it?
Yeah, he did. He opened the Arndale Centre in Stretford.
At Moss Side, the barbers there. So, did you ever, if Ali, obviously, as kind of showbiz element to Ali, did you feel like punching him as well at that time?
No,
must be very wise, would it?
Well, seeing as it was only 7 at the time, it wouldn't have been a great idea, really.
Well, I've got to say, to be fair, John, I don't want to pull rank, but I did do Top of the Pops with Marquis Smith, which I've got to say probably wasn't entirely different from that. You get to the second run.
Not to Steve.
That wasn't.
Well, maybe not.
Didn't Marquis Smith always say that's the time he got to the Pops with a proper backing band?
Well, he was just
easy.
Nonsense. The thing is, I think I bonded with Steve because we sat in a pub on Deansgate and we were having a bit of a laugh about that whole Top of the Pops thing. But it's there's a great bit. We did the second. So obviously, there's a bit in my book about it. We talk about it, and the record company said, right, you can do the single with Mark as long as you agree. It was like that bit in the book where it says, we're making hair stew first, catch your hair. So you have to do the record. You have to do an interview with the melody maker, an interview with the enemy, a video, and then if it gets in the charts, you have to do Top of the Pops. So we did all that. We get to 18, get into the charts, do Top of the Pops, do the first run through, and then the producer up in the God says they don't want him on the show, which was like an interesting problem. It was an interesting problem for two reasons. First, we'd done everything we'd been asked to do. Secondly, we didn't want to do the show without him. Thirdly, who's going to tell him?
Yeah, that's the hardest bit.
Good luck with that.
So we did the show, and then it was mildly rude to Gillian Tailforth in the pub, because obviously EastEnders was recorded there. So I think Arlie, probably would have been physically more threatening.
Why did they not want him to do the show? I mean, he's singing 2/3 of the track.
Broadcasting, isn't it? I mean, like even when we used to do Top of the Pops back in the sort of Manchester days, you'd be recording She Comes in the Fall, you'd have flares on, and they'd have those dollies and those sort of things with the cameras going over, and the cameramen all wanted to be doing Antiques Roadshow or Blue Peter, and they'd be mouthing over the backing track, "Look at his bloody trainers, look at his hat," and they'd be running over the feet of young girls in the audience who'd be kind of screaming. So it was more like Ben-Hur than it was like The Doors, that film The Doors, really, to be honest. If you were rude to the commissioner on the door, you weren't going in, really, to be honest.
I imagine it's probably still a bit like that in a way. So I mean, it sounds like you're going through your back pages, as Bob Dylan once said, because too much Texas. Do you think a lot about the past, sort of reevaluate, change it?
I think you can do that if you've been incredibly lucky, because I've just been so incredibly lucky in life and in people I've worked with. And I mean, I think it's nice. We never really finished. We never put the coda on this band, so it's well worth going back and playing some music with friends. And it was a funny bit actually. Paul and Steve do this "Brother, Where Are They" podcast, which is great because it's just like being in the back of the van with them again. But there was a funny interview with. It was a brilliant interview with Clint, the other month, and he said something very revealing. He said when he found out that I was playing with Paul and Steve, he said he was insanely jealous of me, which I thought was a typically funny, fair, and approximation of the situation. And so I think I'm not going back to everything that I've done, but I think it's, and also like with Kelly, she works in Musicians Union now, and she hasn't played for a few years, so I thought it'd be really great if she could go out and play. Because it's sort of going back to the.
I mean, Paul, that's interesting that Tom was saying, like Clint, listed names, insanely jealous of for me, one of the great rhythm sections in post-punk. And yet, I mean, you've obviously got a proper job now and you play now and then for fun. But your brother Steve, I mean, recognised one of the great bass players of that period, and you can't get in a band. I mean, is it all just talk, this, or why don't people give him a job? Basically, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know that Steve would necessarily want to get in a band now. I mean, I don't know really. It's a difficult thing these days. I'm not sure what constitutes being in a band these days. Is it that you do it for a living? Because there isn't a living out there, is there, for a lot of people? I don't think. So what is it? At what point are you in a band, and what point are you just playing with people? And what point are you in a band? I don't know. Is there a number of rehearsals a week? What are the hours?
Yeah, the qualification. I guess the model you're talking about here in this interview is pretty well for 99% of bands. This is the model, isn't it? It's something you could just do now and then in between all the other things that you have to do in life, or it's a patchwork kind of career. I mean, what do you do? I mean, it sounds like you've got a proper job now. You've got a posh microphone, and we haven't, so you must be.
Well, I didn't get this for this. I got this for the podcast. I didn't get this for my job. I work in IT. Funnily enough, I work in systems IT which is. I have done for the last 32 years, and it's been, I've never been a fan of these people, like Smithers Jones or Steve Diggle does it every second song, where you sneer at people who work for them, as if they've somehow made some terrible choice in life. But my career has given me everything I've had in life. I've brought 3 kids up, I've got a house, I've been all over the world with work. So I'm not one of those people who sees it as a step down to work, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so if I can fit playing in, I'll do it. If I can't, that's all right as well.
I was never comfortable with that either. It's very much a post-punk staple, wasn't it? That kind of sniffing it. That people had jobs, like being in a band wasn't a job as well in a sense.
Yes,
I mean, it's a fun job, but it's still a job, isn't it?
It is. I mean, how much of being, if you're a touring musician, how much of that would you say you actually enjoy? I mean, you do enjoy the 90 minutes on stage, but you're not telling me at this stage of his career they still enjoy schlepping into a venue and getting all the shit on stage and setting up and sound, the 15 millionth time you've sound checked harmony in my head must get a bit wearing after a while, I would thought. So it's a job, and I'm not knocking anybody who does it, and it's a great job and it's got great rewards, but I've never got the idea that we're free and, you know, we kick ass every night, because nobody will come and see that. If there's not an element of professionality after 40 years in a band, then you're in the wrong job, really.
Quite a funny gig with Spirals, where we were touring in Europe. It probably was in 1991, and I think we were playing in Belgium or something, and the band was just really bored. They're just really, really bored. So, and it's quite, I mean, I'm not being rude at other players, and obviously Spirals, fantastic band, but, you know, maybe Craig wasn't trying that hard, and Martin wasn't, and Graham and Clint wasn't. So I decided to just make no effort at all. I'd make it really clear that I wasn't making effort at all, until they all got quite annoyed and then started playing a lot better than they had been before. So it's sometimes a bit like, you know, you have to find it is a job, because you have to find your métier. You have to find you have to kind of ride the moment. And it's funny, because they got off the stage, and I think they kind of was, you know, they were hanging out with the record company, whoever it was. So I think it was in Stuttgart, and I went on the bus, and they came on about an hour and a half later, and I had Jean-Luc Godard's The Weekend on the bus, and they came in. And as soon as they came in, this pig got his throat slit like that on camera. Like, it was a bit like how it had been on stage earlier, you know. But it's not commentary on them, you know. It can be a bit of a job sometimes, but you have to find, you know, you have to kind of fall until you pick yourself up sometimes, you know. And as long as someone knows that it's, you know, you got to make it. It's better than, you know, I mean, it is better than working, probably packing pallets in a factory. Yeah. You have to remember, and I used to have to, you know, bless him, because he's not around anymore, but I did used to say to Craig occasionally, you know, when we were carrying some gear up the stairs to the boardwalk after coming back from America on some ridiculously badly organised tour, you know, he was saying, "Oh, I don't want to carry this upstairs." I say, "Yeah, but, you know, you have to remember, we're not stacking pallets in a factory. You've got to remember that, because we're actually very lucky." And he did know that, you know.
Yeah, you got to appreciate it, but you can't look down on the people in the audience who are basically paying for it all.
Paying for it all, yeah.
I mean, so Tom, what's your relationship like now with Spirals? Is everything okay?
Well, we did some reissues, and BMG did some reissues of all the 4 albums. I was on, not the one that they did with Stephen after me, which is cool. And Graham brought them round, and he said the pizzas have arrived, and I hadn't seen them for 12 years. I only saw them for like 2 minutes, and I went into town. I saw Martin in Cafe Nero, and we signed some stuff, and that was really nice. And then went over to go and see Clint. So I think I mean, you know, it's not a good idea. I'm talking about myself here. I'm not talking about them. It's not a good idea to fall out with your mates. I wouldn't recommend it. And if you do fall out with your mates, I mean, time will show you that it's not a good idea. And I wish, you know, I mean, it goes without saying, I wish Craig was here. I met his son the other day, and Levon. I met him with Tintin at the Bet gig, you know, and we were walking back. It was almost like a film, really. I was talking to him for about 10 minutes on the way back out of Beck, and there were lots of, just bear with me a second, and there were lots of fans who were there for the Harry Styles gig. I mean, it was a very bizarre thing. I've just got to open the door, because there's a
we don't need you. We'll carry on without you. So
yeah. No,
we'll edit that out.
I mean, I can lob that question to you, Paul. I mean, do you still speak? I mean, obviously you speak to Steve, but to the rest, do you still have communication with people in the very large extended Fall family?
I do. We did the podcast with Craig and Mark the other week, which was wonderful to do. You know, I mean, obviously Mark's, you know, I would call him the brother I never had, except for the fact I had 3 other brothers. But so I'm obviously never really lost touch with Mark. Craig, when first saw Craig when Steve's book came out, and then we've been kept in touch intermittently ever since. But I mean, it's brilliant to talk to Craig. Craig is, I could listen to Craig talk all day. He's, you know, and Simon's always been a mate of mine. I think I'm pretty sure never really not got on with anybody who's been in the Fall. Pretty much. I mean, even Mark, I never fell out with. You know, we agreed when I left. That was a perfectly amicable situation, I think. So no, I mean, life's too short for that kind of shit, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, it's only a band. I mean, it's not as important as relationships, is it? Let's face it.
Yeah, I mean, is it like a sort of curious kind of code between ex-Fall members, or like a sort of strange nod? Oh, you went through that.
Yeah, there is. It definitely is. It's like, you know, it's like war veterans. You know. Not that it was like being in a war, being in the Fall, but you know, there's a sort of
worse.
no, give over. There's an unspoken sort of acceptance that we all know what it was like to be in the Fall, you know. And the more you read, it's a bit. I mean, obviously, there's lots of aspects of being in the Fall, which is exactly the same as every other band, but it was slightly different. The Fall, for good reasons and bad reasons, it was a different experience to most people's experiences of being in a band, and there's a kind of shorthand there that we all know how it works. So I've never got that you know, you'd expect that me and say Kieran or Pete from the last lineup wouldn't get on. Well, why would we not? We've both been in the Fall. We've both worked with Marky Smith. Why would we have this sudden thing that we didn't understand each other? You know, it's a similar experience. So no, I get on with everybody. Me.
I guess the thing about that band was it was not really a band, but it is a band. That's the contradiction, and it's this incredible poet, really. Because I mean, I know he found that pretentious thing to say, but it's a very northern, brilliant poet who needed music to to create the backdrop for the words, isn't it? And that was your job to provide that, which for most of us would be a band, but it's not the way he's looking at it, is it?
It depended, didn't it? I mean, that's the other thing. Sometimes he would say stuff like, you know, about the last lineup, these are the best lineup I've ever had, and I couldn't work without them, and I'd never work with anyone again, and mean it 100%. And then another time he'd say Steve was the Fall. He said it about Martin was the Fall. And other times, it'd be like, you know, the Halle, you know, him leaving was like the Halle losing the triangle player. So I mean, it depended what mood he was in, really.
Yeah.
And the other thing you got to remember about Mark, and I mean, I'm not claiming to be an expert on Marky Smith. I worked with him for a relatively short period of time, and I wouldn't say we were ever what you'd call mates. But the way the Marky Smith of interviews wasn't Marky Smith any more than it is with anybody else, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to take that with a pinch of salt. And that Renegade book was Marky Smith in interview mode. I mean, literally being interviewed by the ghostwriter, by Austin.
Mm.
So that's not him, really. There's aspects of him, and, you know, they look very similar, but it's not Marky Smith. And why would it be, you know?
I mean, Tom, the dynamics in Spirals, it must be odd for you as a singer to join. I mean, it's quite weird to parachute somebody else's bands, you know, with their in-jokes there. Well, very Oldham, I guess. And usually, this is not always, but the singer usually puts the band together around the singer. But you were kind of the other way around, weren't you? You were brought in to vocalise the songs, weren't you? So, I mean, how does that work? Was it kind of awkward at first, or did it just slot very quickly?
I don't think it worked that way, because what happened was I think Stephen, he wanted to do something else, and obviously wanted to do the Rain Kings and stuff, and him and Graham had come and started the band. And I think it was more like they auditioned Noel to be in it, and I don't think he would have been right. And they also they had an audition with John Matthews, who ended up in the High, and Clint had a go at singing, and some friend of Martin's, whose name I can't remember, and it really was in a situation where the band had such a they built up such a kind of momentum, doing 2 Peel sessions and doing loads of fanzine interviews and local radio stuff. And they got to that point where they really did have to find a singer, because if they didn't find a singer, all that was going to dissipate. So it was really, and I joined the band, and I did sing songs that Stephen sung before really well and all that lot. But I think the thing is, I'd already been in bands since 1976 myself. I mean, from being like 11 years old. So I'm not talking about your question. I'm just saying the analysis. I've been in bands for a long time, by 1989, really. And we've done, bands I were in had done gigs in Camden, with really early bands that Damon Albarn was in, even before Seymour and stuff like that. So I'm not saying I paid my dues. I don't think anyone's paid their dues, but I think I could make sure that the momentum continued. And, the other thing is, I don't know, there's this thing about singers, and Stephen is a great singer and is such a big part of that band. And but, there is a funny conversation I sometimes have about singers, because sometimes people come up to me and say, oh, you're a much better singer than you were back then. And I don't really agree with that, because I think Iggy Pop is a good singer, because if he could be heard over the stages, they're kind of a good singer, aren't they, really? So I think I have quite a loud voice, and it's very different from maybe what Stephen did, but I could sing, and I turned up, and I was passionate about it. And I guess I brought a little bit of, I think maybe sort of Graham maybe more into the kind of psychedelic bands, whereas I think maybe me and Clint a bit more into doo-wop, a little bit more into Elvis, a bit more into the 60s music before it got too psychedelic. I think there's a little bit, I think it's a bit of the Everly Brothers, and This Is How It Feels, I think. And that's, I can't, I'm not saying, I mean, Clint wrote that song. But I can't really, at that time, I can't imagine anyone else who would have sung that song, because I think they just, this out feels to be lonely, this out feels to be small. I think there's a lot of singers who would have thought that vulnerability was something they couldn't really connect with, and certainly wouldn't be able to sing to one person, let alone eventually thousands of people on a terrace. It's so I think I did add stuff to it, but there was a lot there already. God, I would be crazy to not acknowledge that.
It's interesting for a singer to interpret somebody else's song, isn't it? I think that's quite a skill, that, to take somebody else's words and make them mean something.
Well, we did a version of Gimme Shelter, which actually Bob Stanley said he thought was the best thing that we ever did, and I'd never heard the original.
What does he know about music?
He dabbles.
But I'd never heard the original. I think sometimes with songs, it's. I think we've said this before, but I heard Devo's version of Satisfaction, or heard the Rolling Stones version of Satisfaction, and like the whole Devo thing, like where they took like Led Zeppelin guitar riffs and sped them up, would have really annoyed all the Led Zeppelin fans. Who were at college at that time. So it's all about taking stuff and finding,
that's interesting. Yeah, because when Devo did Satisfaction, Mick Jagger wasn't in the room with them, but if you're singing one of Clint's songs, it's quite the skill to, hopefully the skill is that you're going to do it more justice than he could do it himself. I mean, otherwise it's pointless, isn't it?
It's not that really. It's even more fundamental than that, because what it is take a song like Saturn V. I mean, obviously Clint wrote it and it's a great song, and I'm not taking any ownership over it. But if you're a confident singer and an interpreter and you can work songs out, you can actually get it from the verse to the first chorus the first time it's played in a rehearsal room. Now that's actually a bit of a skill. I mean, I'm sure people in the Brill building knew about that. And, so that, like Dionne Warwick was like the first person to sing a lot of those songs that Burt Bacharach worked with Hal David. And eventually she ended up being, I'm not comparing myself to Dionne Warwick. What I'm saying is she didn't start off as a singer who was supposed to be in front of microphones at all. She was someone who just did versions of.
But it's more than a cover version, though, isn't it? If it's a cover, you're interpreting it kind of on your own terms in your own project. But if it's somebody else in your band that's written it, I think it's a very different dynamic. And I think that's kind of what Paul's saying. Yeah,
getting it from the verse to the chorus when it's written in handwriting on a piece of paper. If you can do that, that's like throwing the first bit of rope over a river and to build a bridge. It's like that, and people. Some people have it because they shout. I mean, I'm very into Ian Dury, and he didn't really cut. I mean, he did a few songs by other people, like England's Glory and stuff like that. But he was, being a songwriter, you can be a songwriter and sing other people's songs. I think Ian Dury would have. I would like to have heard, if he'd been alive, he could have done stuff with Hot Chip, and I think it would have been really good. I think that would have worked really well, so he could have taken their songs and interpreted them. So I am a songwriter, but sometimes you've got to know when to just leave it exactly how it is. And like we did I Want You, Martin wrote that, and I kind of we played a gig with the Cult, and I wanted the vocal to be a little bit like the Cult or something, and a little bit like Stuck in the Middle with You, where it keeps on coming back to the same note. So that's a kind of trick in it. It's a kind of, if you know what the trick is, and that's kind of that's taking the thing. But as I say, the main thing with interpreting songs is just singing it for the first time when it's written on a piece of paper.
I mean, obviously now coming back to the others, I mean, that's different, isn't it? Because I guess did you write a bulk of the songs for it, or were they all songs written the same kind of way? Each member of the band brought songs into the pot.
The first album we just recorded it all. It was Julian recorded it all just on a digital 8-track. There used to be we used to use this rehearsal room in the Cook Freeze, which was part of Manchester College. Wasn't in the studio there, which obviously a lot of people recorded in, and features in 24 Hour Party people for the scenes where Happy Mondays are recorded. We just recorded it in this cinder block room where we just wrote the songs in the rehearsal room, and someone brought an idea in, or we just jammed them. And that album's really quite amazing, really, considering it was just recorded on like a digital 8-track, really. And then the second album was, I think people brought songs in. Paul brought in a couple of songs, Steve brought a song in, and Kelly wrote a song. So that was more, and Jason did. So it was, the second album was a bit more kind of, here's a song, let's play it through and let's add what we can to it. So the first one was more jamming it out. So
I mean, do you still write songs all the time? Do you still get the itch? You walk down the street, think, oh God, there's another one coming into my head.
You have to, with me, I go through barren periods where I don't write anything at all for like maybe a year, and you have to live good experiences and bad experiences and put them in your little mental kind of knapsack, and then you bring them out. I mean, you know, the other day I was driving somewhere with one of the guys out of another band that I'm in. He was saying that him and his wife had decided not to have kids. So I came up with this idea for a song called, haven't written it yet, but we're not going to have kids. And it says, we've decided we're starting to not have kids. We've decided what schools they're not going to. We've decided what sex they're not going to be. We've decided what the colour of their eyes aren't going to be. Let's go on and on like that. Right at the end of the song, you hear a baby crying right at the end of it. And that's just the idea of a song, which is a bit, it's just, it's just, you know, it's a kind of, you know, so life throws up. I mean, this album, I'm doing an album up in Blueprint, and I've been working on that, and that's called the Grand Mal. It's kind of about the pandemic and the lockdown, and you know, the songs on there. One idea, you know, there's this thing. I'll just tell you very quickly. You know, there's this thing where this phrase where people say, "It's not my first rodeo." So I thought, well, where does that come from? So I've done a song called "This Is My First Rodeo." So before I wrote the song, I went on Google and Googled loads of stuff about rodeos and what you have to do if you're doing your first rodeo. The second thing I did was I tried to make sure there wasn't an MGM musical that was made in 1942 where they spent £1 million dressing 300 people up as horses doing their first rodeo. So it turns out it's from Mommy Dearest, where they asked the main actress, can you play a dried up drunk? And she says, it's not my first rodeo, and that's where it comes from. So the idea of the song is it's all right for people to do things for the first time in this kind of wrap-around internet culture. Everyone wants to pretend they've done everything 100 times before. Well, if you do that, you might go through all your life, going through really significant things like having children or losing your virginity or fighting in a war and out like you've done it all 1 million times before. Well, you're going to miss your life if you do that.
I mean, Paul, do you still get songs? You know, I mean, you're not a prolific writer, but you do write stuff, don't you? So
no. I mean, I've never really been of the type. I love since the fall, really. I've always liked to bring summer, so which is quite weird as a drummer, because the thing about it is, I mean, you've got to tell someone what to play, which is kind of, you know, because by definition you've got to say this is the tune. You can't do it on the drum. So someone in the band, you're saying to them this is what you should, or at least the bare bones of what they should play. But no, I don't. I when there's something that needs a song, I'll try and have something ready, because I've really enjoyed the process of as a drummer to bring songs to a band. It's great because it's amazing what people can do with it, you know. So me in my back bedroom with an acoustic guitar, and then you give it to a band, and then it turns into something. It's something I'd never get bored with, you know. But it's not something I do normally. Just that's going to stay me on the acoustic guitar in a bedroom, because who wants to hear that? For Christ.
Well, everyone has to get over that barrier, don't they? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose the lead up to that is, I mean, I know it's only 2 gigs here, and they'll say they went really well. You know, would there be a possibility more gigs and maybe more recording?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I never assume that other people got time to do things. I think we have to make sure, you know, that I mean, I think we're already busy with other things. You know, I don't think that'll happen. I think this is just a really limited thing, and I think for once, you know, we weren't the biggest band in the world. We weren't the most successful band that most of the people were ever in before, during, or afters. But for 2 nights, we can do something that's very limited, where people, you know, hopefully from a week before, people going, "Oh God, I haven't got a ticket for that," you know. And I think that is doing it justice. So I think if you start, I think, you know, there's not enough scarcity sometimes in things. So you actually need scarcity, I think, to show that something, you know. I think we're doing it for good reasons. I think we're doing it because we're friends and we just want to put a coda on it and, you know, and knock it on the head. I don't think you always need to do more things. I think, you know, sometimes you see band, I mean, you just say, I mean, I'm not knocking what you're saying, John, because I don't think it was wrong. I think you're saying that, you know, I'm always playing somewhere. Maybe I need to stop doing that. You know, I don't think it would be a critical analysis to say that at all. And I think sometimes you need a bit more kind of scarcity and things. So I think we just do these 2 gigs, and I kind of hope that people are going, "Oh God, we didn't get tickets for it," because I think you know, you know, we've had the pandemic and all the stuff that's going on now, and I don't think things are particularly easy for music. So why just do 2 things that are really easy that will make a couple hundred people happy? You know,
it deserves to be special. You know, it's like so much music. It deserves to be something that people have to work at to get to. You know, or you know, instead of just being everywhere all the time, it deserves to be an event.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the big thing with music now. I think it's devalued in a way because it's so easy to get, and it's, you know, it's like what I mean, I'm not the first person to say, but when you go to listen to music and you can listen to everything that's ever been written, it's almost impossible to choose what to listen to, isn't it? When you've got 5 albums, it's pretty simple, really, isn't it? But I mean, that's just me being an old fart. I mean, it's, you know, which it clearly is, but then that's what I am. So I'm going to embrace it.
Yeah, well, all my cards from my daughters, they make cards for Father's Day, and every single one of them says Father's Day on it. I did ask them if it was deliberate, and they said it wasn't. But my 9-year-old wrote Farters on one, and the 5-year-old Julie copied it. But not the worst review I've ever had, to be honest. So,
laughing at that joke goes through the generations, if nothing else does.
Yeah, of course.
Probably the one thing that did happen with us, I hope Paul doesn't mind me bringing it up, but we played at the Willowman Festival. I think it was at some point in, I'm going to say, I don't know where it was, I'm going to say it was probably 2003, and we basically got chucked out of a guest house because I left a cup of coffee in the room half drunk.
I'm not having that. I left the cup of coffee.
So they turned up with 7 police vans and escorted us over the Scottish English border. I think maybe that was the very beginning of the call for Scottish independence.
Is that as rock and roll as it gets? Yeah,
that was it. Yeah. To be fair, there was an empty biscuit packet on the side as well.